All right. Well, just to make sure that we give Wayne as much time as possible, I'm going to introduce him, have him come up and share. If you guys need to grab another muffin, which I completely understand because they're amazing, or a drink or anything, please feel free to do so. But Wayne Hedlund is an amazing man of God that I've been honored to get to know more and more over the last year and a half or so since I've been here. He's been involved at Elam since 1991. He came on staff in 91, and it was at 95, you said, Pastor Wayne, you got involved with, forgive me.
I was youth pastor in 91 to
96, and then youth pastor in 96. He's been involved with Elam, different aspects of Elam, different organizations here on this campus since 1991. And as we got together about a little less than a year ago, we were talking about EGC Kids, and Pastor Josh and I asked Pastor Wayne to be involved and come and examine EGC Kids for an outside perspective of what do you see? What do you see? What do you recommend as somebody who's been involved in Elam for a long time, but as somebody who has so many years of kids ministry, youth ministry experience? What do you see? We sat down with him in the office after he had some observations and shared some things with us, and Pastor Josh and I were both blown away at his insight and his ideas, creativity, and we were like, "Can you come? Can you help us? Can you do a training for us?" And so this is the birth of that. So I'm really excited that Pastor Wayne has agreed to share, and I think you're going to be really blessed to hear what he has to say. So let's put our hands together and welcome Pastor Wayne Hedlund. You want on stage, on floor? No, the floor's good. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm using this because you're recording, right?
Yes.
All right, so I'll keep the microphone in my face, even though I'm sure you can hear me. So I really have a heart for kids ministry, even though I'm not involved in doing it right now. I'm pretty much like totally max with what God's given me, but I have God has put something in my heart, but hasn't always been true. I graduated from Roberts in 91, and at the time I was attending Elam, and and I came up after service and asked Pastor Mike, he was speaking, Pastor Mike Cavanaugh, and I said, "Hey, great message, thanks so much, that was really encouraging." And I was a senior, and he said, "What are you going to do when you graduate?" I only met him one other time. And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Come and do an internship with me, full-time internship." So I actually lived with Mush and Alexa Schneider. Some of you guys know the Schneiders. I lived with the Schneiders, paid like $200 a month for rent and food and board, and worked full-time, 30 hours here at Elam. And then I worked a full-time job as well, so 70 hours. When you're single, just do it, you know what I'm saying? So I was like working two jobs, one here for free and then another job. And so my first day that I came here as an intern, I sat down at his office, and I said, "So what do you want me to do?" He said, "I want you to work on our kids ministry. Our kids ministry is brand new. It's got all kinds of issues and challenges, and we're just kind of faking it and all that kinds of stuff." And I just looked at him, and I said, "I don't do kids." I'd never worked with kids before, never even babysat. I just was not good with kids ministry. It's kind of like I don't do windows or something like that. And he said, "Well, you're here. You're going to do kids." So I dove into kids ministry and discovered something that the Lord had kind of set me up to work with kids. Because for several years prior, while I was in college, and actually my full-time job while I was an intern, I was working at a home for the mentally handicapped. And in particular, mentally handicapped adults. And at the home I was in Rochester, at the time, they had taken all of the mentally handicapped adults that had major behavioral problems and put them all in one home. It was the only home that had a rubber room, where you'd actually put them in the rubber room sometimes because they were going off. I had to have something called skip training, or do one-man takedowns and two-man takedowns and all kinds of crazy stuff, which I did regularly. And so I had no clue that God was setting me up. Okay, not that I did one-man takedowns with kids, okay, but to work with kids. While I was working in this home for the mentally handicapped, there was one resident we had who was probably in his 40s. His name was Tim, and he was in a wheelchair at all times, but he had, I can't remember which hepatitis it was, but it was the one that you don't want to have, and that's very contagious, whichever one that is, and that's what he had. So there's always a risk, you know, and, you know, you don't really going to get hepatitis unless, you know, you have bodily fluids, you know, connecting. So somehow he had figured that out because he would spit at you at all times. And he would have these behavioral, I don't know how to, you know, just totally go ballistic. He would just get all upset and start spitting and hitting and all these kinds of things. And over the course of the time I was working with them, they started, every time I was working in the home, if he started going crazy, they would all go, "Wayne!" and they call me in to calm him down. And I didn't really fully understand what that was all about, except for the fact that I evidently had a gift for calming him down. And oftentimes I would come into the room while he was spitting and pitching a fit, and I would just do something really weird, you know, kind of like what we just did. I would walk in and go, you know, and he would stop what he was doing. And I'd go, "Yo, Tim! I cannot believe I get to see you right now! Just let me find!" And it would just totally like break him out of, you know, whatever it was that was going on. It would just completely, and over time, by the time I left there, most of the staff had picked up that little thing that I had done. That was just like one of many things. And then I'm finding myself in a room at the time, the kids ministry at that time, believe it or not, we were in the tab over there, and parents would come to church, and then we would release the kids after 10 minutes in the service, and they would all go back and go out the doors into a bus, and we would bus them around the block over to College Hall on the Elam campus, and that's where we had kids' church. Imagine being a parent going, "Where's my kid going?" About safety, we didn't really have it there. And at the time I had, at one point I had like over 60 kids, grade school kids. We had 2 services. So I had 60 kids in one service and about 30 or so kids in another service. So I had a ton of kids. And here I'm finding myself in this room with kids, and all of a sudden everybody's just kind of ants in their pants, and I find myself going, you know, and boom, it just like, you know, do something. And over time, I've just discovered, first of all, that God has given me a great love for children. I love kids desperately. And I love even like when my wife and I are walking through Walmart or something like that, we see a little kid, and I, you know, like the parents walk by and the kids, you know, I just can't resist, you know, doing that. I also have found that I am a scary kind of a guy, not just with kids, but adults. But with kids, so one of the things that I love to do is to turn that fear into joy. I remember one time here at Elam, I was not involved in kids ministry. The kids did not know me. I was sitting in the 5-year-old room with my kid because he was having a hard time. And so I'm in there sitting over in the corner, and there was like 3 or 4 kids that were really having a hard time in the room. And I just, you know, started turning on a few different charms that I've learned over the years. And by the time the room was over, there were about 6 kids that kept trying to come over to me and to talk to me and to sit at my feet, even though I wasn't really, I kept like, go back, you know, that kind of thing. And so I love to do that. I love to try to attract and pull kids in and to communicate with kids. So what I want to talk to you about today is it's called JibberJabber, just for fun. I don't know what it means. But what do we do, and how can we communicate well and effectively with kids? So I'm going to share with you some things that I've learned. First of all, and this isn't in your notes yet, but one of the best ways and one of the most foundational things that you can do to learn how to connect with kids is to try to understand and remember what it's like to be a kid, which is actually for us very difficult, okay? For most of you, it's been a while since you were a 3-year-old or a 7-year-old, right? And most of us don't really remember what it's like to be a kid, but there are a few things that you can do to kind of prep yourself. And I just want to take a step back, and Pastor Greg mentioned this, but what's the whole point of communicating with kids? What's the whole point of me being here today and talking about communicating with kids? Of course is so that we can connect with them in the hopes that they what? Will connect with God and experience something with God that maybe they haven't experienced before. And I would love to be able to say that all of our children come from great homes where mom and dad's doing it right, but most of us know that that's not the case. Even my kids, I don't think I'm always doing it right, so hopefully you can help me do it right better, while I bring them here, et cetera, et cetera. So, and of course, when I was in children's ministry, there are some sad, sad stories I can tell you about with kids that came from terrible circumstances and situations, and we want to bring the love and the light of Christ, right? Into these kids, so when they leave this room or the preschool room or wherever they are, they're leaving more encouraged and strengthened than they were when they came in. And that's because of what Christ has given us. So that's what we're doing this for. That's why I'm talking to you about. That's why I think it's so important to learn how to communicate with kids. Because communicating with kids is kind of like communicating with aliens. It is a unique gift and skill. It's not something that comes naturally to most of us, even if we're parents. Even if we've been doing kids ministry for years, sometimes I will visit churches. It's one of my jobs, and I will be appalled by how people are sometimes communicating with children. And I just want to say, get off the stage, okay? Because you're not connecting. You're actually making things worse. I don't want to go to church because he looks mad, and seems mad. And if that's what God's like, I don't want to be there, et cetera, et cetera. So how can we put ourselves in their shoes? What we just did, JibberJabber, or not JibberJabber, what do you call it? The intermission or whatever it's called. Interlude, thank you. That's a wonderful way to get into the shoes of kids. Another wonderful way to get into the shoes of kids is to play what they play. As a matter of fact, if I had time, it would be really fun if we just had a ton of time today for me to just bring in Matchbox cars. And for all of us to just get on the floor as adults and play Matchbox cards. And what do you do when you're playing Matchbox cards? You're doing this thing that adults forget how to do. It starts with a P and ends with a D. Pretend. Pretend. And so some of the ways that we get into kids is just to remind ourselves and to practice some of those things. And that's going to actually help us be better communicators with kids. One of my favorite activities, but because of time I'm not going to do it, but Pastor Greg, hold this on your plate, or Pastor Don, for a future reference, okay? It's a wonderful activity to do, is during break, like if we took a break in 10 minutes, this is what I would do. I'd split the room into two, and I would say, this half of the room, we're going to go over and get our muffins and our coffee. We're going to spend 10 minutes together just hanging out and talking like we did at the very beginning. But this half of the room, you have to do it on your knees. In this half of the room, you're not allowed to talk with one another. You have to talk with someone over here on their knees. And so that whole idea of being down on your knees and walking around and looking up at adults, and it just kind of reminds you, oh yeah, this is what they see all the time. My big belly, that kind of thing. So anyways, so I'm going to talk with you about 4 primary methods of communication with children. How you look, how you sound, and this is in your notes, what you say, and how you hear, okay? 4 things that we're going to talk about: how you look, how you sound, what you say, and how you hear. You probably have heard this before. I'm pretty sure Pastor Josh has said this over the microphone, etc. But in communication world, 7% of what we communicate is received through what we say. So our words. So people, I'm communicating with you right now, and you're receiving it, 7% of it you're receiving just with the words that I'm saying. 38% of it is my tone of voice, right? My inflections and my tone of voice. And then the rest, 55%, is my nonverbals and my expressions and my gestures and all that fun stuff. Here it is. I don't know what the statistics are, but you can throw all that out when it comes to kids. Because it's even less with words, okay? As a matter of fact, the younger you get, the less it's words, and the more it's your tone of voice and your expressions. I wouldn't be surprised if we were talking 4-year-olds if it was 3% words Okay? I mean, it's just, I think you can walk into a preschool room and go, hello, 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 hello. And they're all over you, you know. Or you can walk in and say, hi there, Johnny, it's great to see you, and it doesn't quite have the same effect, right? So it's not all about a word. Sometimes it's about other things, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. And the skills I'm going to teach you right now, they work with one-on-one kids, okay? They work with small groups of kids. They work with connecting, with counseling, with caring, with praying, anything that you're going to do with interaction. They're great for talking to small groups, to large group. If you get asked to tell a story up here with kids, super important what I'm about to share with you. If you're asked to give announcements up here with the kids, or to take the offering, or to lead a game, anything that has to do with talking to kids up here, I'm going to talk to you about what you need to do. Okay? Is that all right? Mm-hmm. We good? So let's dive in. The first one is, on the next page, how you look. Okay? So according to statistics, it's 55%. For us, maybe it's 58 or 60 or 80. I have no idea. But it's hugely important, not how you look like, do I have zits and, is my white t-shirt showing or not showing? Or that's not what we're talking about. As a matter of fact, it really doesn't matter a whole lot whether or not you have a lot of weight or a little bit of weight, whether you're bald or not bald. What matters is the love and the expression and the care that you give through your communication and hopefully through the heart that God has given you for the kids. Okay? And so we've heard the term actions speak louder than words. And so here's what I want to say to you. If I didn't have all the time that I have right now and I could only share one thing with you, because it's 55% or more, I would just share this. I would just say, let's figure out how to use our nonverbals and our expressions and our body language to communicate the love of God to kids. Because according to statistics, that's where it's at. When I worked with mentally handicapped adults, some of them were 6, 9 months old intellectually, even when they were grown bodies. Tom was the grown adult I was in charge of. His name was Tom, and I had to change his diapers. He was like 60 years old, but he was like 3 months old in his brain, and he didn't understand any of the words that I spoke, and I was constantly having to do all kinds of other things to communicate with him. So, let me tell you about this. This is the foundation for all of the communication, this nonverbal and the expressions and stuff, okay? So I'm going to share with you 5 critical nonverbal skills that, yes, we have to practice, okay? And unfortunately, we don't do them with one another very often. But if we're going to be in kids ministry, we want to be effective and powerful, we need to actually practice them. So the first one, and the absolutely 100% most critical, if you can't get any of the others, get this one down, okay? And I actually have become kind of a proponent for this. I talk about this almost everywhere I go, whether I'm talking about kids ministry or not. It is super important to do, and actually for most of us, very hard. But guess what it is? Smile. That's it. Smiling. Oh, yeah, there he is, right there. Look at my smiling baby, okay? Come on. You see the smiling baby up there? Okay. You cannot not smile when you see that picture. In fact, put the other one up, Pastor Don. Okay? I mean, she is adorable right there, okay? But she's not just adorable because she's a baby, but because she's smiling. In this one, she's smiling with her eyes. Okay? So, smiling is, Proverbs 15 says this, a cheerful look brings joy to the heart. Okay? And I believe with all my heart that if all of you would actually practice smiling before you come to church on Sunday, and if you would just remind yourself to smile the entire time you're here, whether you're talking to kids or not, if you're in this room, you should be smiling. If you're like sitting over there and someone else is talking, there should be some sort of smile on your face. Because most of us, our natural face is actually, for some of us, extremely scary. Okay? And it sounds funny, but how many of you know it's true? Okay? You might not think your smile is scary, but other people's smile is scary. I've talked about smiling I was talking with a whole group of pastors one time, and I told them the story about smiling, and there was one pastor in the room, and he looked mad at me. like almost offended. And at one point in time, there's about 30 pastors in the room, and I just said, actually, as I'm talking right now, one of you looks scary, like you're mad at me, like I've offended you. So please, smile. And he just continued to stare at me. And afterwards, I went up and I said, are you mad at me? He goes, what, you're talking about me? And I said, yeah. And I said, you looked mad at me the whole time I was talking about smiling. And he goes, I wasn't mad at you. I thought it was a really great point. I'm going, dude, you have got to figure out how to smile. You are a pastor, right? And he goes, I know how to smile. And his wife was right there, and she goes, And it was like, a little bit of an eye-opener for him. This happened to me. I was the executive pastor here at Elam Gospel Church. Just very quickly, was driving down the road, actually driving on the campus. There was a person from our church that was walking towards me. And so she smiled at me and waved, and I smiled at her. I kind of did one of these, that. And the Lord kind of prompted me to look in the mirror and do it again. So I looked in the mirror, and I went, I'm scowling at her. Like when I drove by her, I actually scowled, but inside I actually was genuinely smiling. And so I actually went into my bathroom. I closed and locked the door. I did not tell my wife or anyone else what I was doing, and I stood in front of the mirror, and no kidding, I did one of these. I practiced smiling, right? Because I knew that I was wanting to smile. It wasn't like I was trying to fake it, but I realized that my face did not know how to communicate what my heart was trying to communicate. I'd do one of these. I'd look away, smile, look back at the mirror. No, I still don't have it. And I actually had to convince myself, when I smile, I feel this, and I had to that was the only way that I could do it, and then whenever I would go to places to speak, which I do a lot of speaking, I would actually practice while I was driving to the place. So I'm driving down the road going, just getting my face stretched out. If you were to pass by me, you'd be crazy and okay. Now I tell you that story because I think smiling is super, super important. I would love for you to create a culture here where you somehow gave each other permission to say, hey, let's work on that smile, okay? Well, we got to turn that on, to give us some code word maybe the kids don't know, but something that would just help us remind each other to smile at kids. And here's where it's at. We smile at children, and anyone, to be honest with you, but in children in particular, it communicates we're safe. It communicates that we're approachable. It communicates that we accept them. It communicates that they have value. And I could just go on and on and on. Just with a smile. Just with a smile. Nothing else. So to me, smiling is I could just talk about it until my session's over. Because I think it's so critically important. I'd love for you guys. Turn to the person next to you and give them a big old smile. Go ahead. Okay? Some of you are like, we'll talk later. Okay? Okay? But smiling is important. Okay, number two. Number two, critical nonverbal skill is eye contact. Okay? It seems pretty simple, pretty easy. But some of us are actually a little bit insecure or busy or focused on other things or had a bad day or whatever it might be, and we're not giving eye contact. But if you want to communicate with children, eye contact is very important. I'm going to tell you something that can be a little bit of a game changer for you. With this is preschool, grade school, it doesn't matter. One of the best ways to give eye contact to children is to get on their level. So if you can give them the time and the energy, it'd be wonderful for you to do one of these deals, the little genuflect eye contact thing, okay, where you just get down on your knee and, hey, Bill, good to see you, and we're having a conversation now on their level. Does anybody know John Bergio? Okay, if you don't know John Bergio, you meet him, you will remember him, because he is 8'23". Very, very tall. The first time I started meeting and hanging out with John, he's a good friend now. When I first started meeting with him, I was intimidated by him because he's huge. He towers over me. The Bible actually says, it says to young people, it says, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, right? But set an example. And I realized that could be more than just when people look down on others, we're automatically communicating something that we're over, that we're bigger, that we're better, that we're above. So even when I'm in my office at my work, if a student or somebody comes in, oftentimes I'll try to change the level of my chair to be at their eye level. So there's no sense of me being over or better or bigger or emotionally communicating something like that. But and when I say eye contact, and I'm not talking about crazy weird eye contact, staring or something weird like that. You guys know what eye contact is. But when we give eye contact, it's hugely helpful. It's a nonverbal. It's a gesture. It's part of that 55%. Number 3, critical nonverbal skill is to move, especially with children's, okay? Children ministry. Here's what I wrote in my notes. Kids are hyper, okay, most of them. They like to move. It's part of their language, okay? I think kids communicate with movement, especially boys. But they communicate with, so if part of their language is movement, how could I communicate better with them? Learn how to move, okay? Learn how to be, move around. Now, it could mean like what I'm doing right now. It could be talking back and forth. When I used to do kids ministry, I was constantly doing one of these deals, and all of a sudden I'm over here and I'm doing all kinds of movement. And you know what that did? And I think I say it later in my notes. But part of what I'm trying to do in kids ministry is I'm trying to trick their attention span. Their attention span's really tiny, but if I can figure out some of these 55% things, I can increase their attention span without them realizing it. Okay? What was I doing when I went, I was tricking their attention span. I was all of a sudden giving them more attention. And so if I see something happen in the room, or if I'm talking to 2 kids, I'll do things, sometimes not even realizing it, to draw their attention back to me. Okay? And movement is a huge one. Learn to move around when you talk. That's not necessarily just walking, but gesturing. And learn how to use your arms, your fingers, your legs, anything that you can do to move. Do something a little crazy in front of the kids. Spin around and start jumping around, and again, when I was in kids ministry, oftentimes I'd be very notorious for just stopping right in the middle of whatever and say, "Oh my, everybody stand up right now. Start jumping up now for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay, sit down. Well, you were too slow. Let's try one more time." Right? And what am I doing? I'm just getting the move. I'm talking their language, you see. And so I want to have you practice something real quick. In your notes, there's a phrase that says, "I've got 4 awesome things to tell you after this session is over. It's going to be awesome." You see that? Mm-hmm. I want you to turn the person next to you, and without saying a word, I want you to communicate those 2 sentences. Okay? It's a little weird. Kids ministry, we have to be weird, okay? But I want to say something to you as well. It was awkward to do what you had us do. Thank you. Okay? No, you had us do. Thank you. But it's not nearly as awkward with kids. Okay? Not to say that we shouldn't do it as adults, because if we can break the ice here, it's a lot easier to break the ice with adults. But ironically, what's very hard and frustrating for me is when we don't break the ice personally when we're with those kids. We have to be overly energetic and we just have to break out of our comfort zone, as you said, so that they can have what they need to be able to move forward. Okay, so turn the person next to you and say, "I have something awesome I want to tell you after the session is over," but don't say a word. Go ahead, do it. Come on, you can do it. Yeah. Okay, you guys need help. No, you practice that at home until you got it. There we go, Greg. Thank you. Okay, here it is. Listen, okay, you have no idea what I said, but I'm doing it. Okay, look, talk to deaf people. Deaf people use expressions, not just sign language, but they've understood. I want to communicate. They're just doing it, and you're like, "Yeah, well, I know what you're saying, but okay." And that's part of what we're trying to do. Number 4, nonverbal. Kids will fall in love with you. Nonverbal skill number 4, loose and free. Loose and free. Kids will fall in love with you if you can be silly and weird sometimes, okay? Some of the best kids ministry leaders are the ones who aren't afraid to be expressive around kids. So dance, walk funny, do something odd, and just being willing to just kind of do that thing. Let me just kind of do the moonwalk, which I have no idea how to do, but I'm just doing something that's just like crazy in front of kids, and that's part of the nonverbal, that's part of the communicating with how you look. And the last one is to learn how to communicate with your expressions, in particular, to communicate how you feel with your expressions. And, okay, now this is something that, I love to say this, go home and do it alone, okay, because it's weird. But everyone just do this with me right now. Look up at me. And I want you, with your facial expressions right now, nobody's looking at you except for me, and I will not laugh at you. I might. But, okay? I want you to see if you can show me a bored expression. Okay, good. How about an excited expression? You need help with the excited, okay? And scared. Okay, some of you look bored, but that's okay. How about insecure? You still look bored, okay? How about confident? Okay, now all those things are great things to learn to be communicator, to understand how to communicate. Here's what I'm going to say to you. It's not in your notes, but it's so important before I move on. When you're working with children, grade school, preschool, every expression and every gesture and every whatever that you can think of, you have to exaggerate it with kids. Not with adults, but with kids. So I said, look scared, and one of you went, okay, do we really do that when we're scared? No, we don't. Okay, we don't go, but with kids, check it out, you do. Okay, so you want to be a good communicator with children, grade school, preschool. We have to be okay, loose and free, but we need to be able to exaggerate all of our communication when it comes to the nonverbals. All right, does that make sense? Are you okay with that? Thoughts, questions, comments, remarks? All right, next one. How you sound. Okay, so we did the 55%, now we're doing the 38%. Okay, the how you sound has two pieces: the voice dynamics, your voice dynamics, and your tone of voice. Voice dynamics, I used to be worship leader, kind of a guy. I used to do worship ministry. In worship ministry, there's something called worship dynamics. And with worship dynamics, have you ever noticed, like at EGC, they do this, and they'll start off soft, and then the drummer will kind of, and then we do the verse again, and the next thing you know, everybody's like banging as hard as they can, and everybody's hands are in the air, and we're all like, come on, Jesus, we love you. Okay, that is dynamics, right? Those are dynamics. That's worship dynamics. Well, when we communicate with children, it's the same thing. We learn how to use a soft voice. We learn how to use a loud voice, and we one of my science teacher in college talked like this the entire time during our science classes. And as you can imagine, everyone loved it. Okay, it was just boring, same tone. Please don't do that with children, right? So in your notes, I said here, this is how you, voice dynamics, first one, it captures their attention when you use voice dynamics. It's that tricking their attention span. Number two, they learn how and when to speak softly. Okay, softly. Softly, here's what it does. Sometimes speaking softly will capture their attention. In fact, in my home, my kids are going crazy, things are weird, and I'll go, Derek. And he'll sometimes just totally capture, if you can hear me, just capture his attention, okay? It emphasizes a point. Sometimes speaking softly can emphasize a point, and it can be used to express a feeling like sadness or fear or being sneaky, right? I'm using voice dynamics. Next one, of course, is learn how to speak loudly. And again, speaking loudly can capture their attention, right? Just all of a sudden, do something there. It can be used to emphasize a point. You know what I mean? Right? Just captures their attention. It can emphasize a point. And again, it expresses a feeling. It can be anger. It can also be fear. Or it can be excitement. Right? Y'all with me? You understand what I'm doing?
Yes.
This is 38% or more with children is just understanding how to use our voice. And then the other piece of the voice is our tone of voice. Tone of voice is different than voice dynamics. It has to do with the timbre of our voice. And it communicates feelings, moods, intentions, expectations. Your tone of voice is what gives you your voice depth and character. Go to training for secretaries who have to answer the phone, and they get all kinds of training if they get it right on using their tone of voice. And they have to learn how to smile when they answer the phone, even if they're all by themselves, because when you smile, your tone of voice changes. Okay, so I want all of you to do me a favor right now. We're going to say, I love you a whole bunch of times. And do this, come on, be with me. We can do this, all right? I want you to say, I love you, and I'm going to tell you how I want you to say it, which tone of voice I want you to use. Be loud so I can hear you, okay? Be energetic. Do this. Okay, let's start with bored. Go ahead.
I love you.
That was pretty good. Okay. Excited.
I love you.
All right, good. Sad.
I love you.
Yeah, very good. I know that you practiced that one. Okay, mad.
I love you.
Okay, good. Provocative. Yeah, I love you. Okay. How about make a statement?
I love you.
Okay, I love you. How about a question?
I love you.
I love you. Okay, good. How about being reflective?
I love you.
Okay, very good. You guys need to work on that one. How about being busy? I'm busy.
I love you.
Okay, and last of all, convincing.
I love
Yeah,
you.
that was fun. Okay, so you guys get it? You understand what we're talking about? Tone of voice, very important. Listen, your expressions make a huge difference in tone. I want you to say, I love you one more time, okay? But I want you to use an angry voice. I want you to say, I love you with an angry voice, but I want you to do it while you're smiling. Okay? Go ahead, do that right now. Smile, and with an angry voice, say, I love you. Go.
I love you.
So weird. You guys can't do it. Okay, so here it is. Without tone of voice, you will always miscommunicate with children. Almost always, I should say. It's a very important part of storytelling, counseling, empathy, all kinds of other things, and you can practice using tone of voice. Third thing I want to talk about is what you say. Okay, what you say. So what was the first one? How you look. Okay, second one is
How you
how we
sound.
sound. The third one is what you say. Now, with children, I said it's not nearly as important as it seems, but I'm just going to kind of backpedal on that because the Bible does say there's power in our words. James has got a whole section that talks about our tongue is set on fire and can run a whole ship like a rudder and blah, blah, blah. So our words do have strength and our words do have power. But the fact is I think if we were to really study scriptures, a lot of times that strength and power that we have with our words is because our words are always combined with the other things I just talked about. So if I say I love you and I'm bored, it doesn't have the power as it does when I say I love you, right? Or if I said I hate you, it might not have the same power as if I said I hate you. You understand? There's power in the words. It's very, very important that we understand that. Of course, as parents, I'm always trying to figure that one out and backpedaling and apologizing and stuff like that. My kids, years ago, I was having a conversation with my kids, one of my kids, Benjamin, okay? And at one point in time, we were arguing about something, and he said, Dad, stop yelling at me. I said, Ben, I'm using a calm voice. He goes, Dad, but you're yelling at me with your eyes. I'm like, okay, come on. My eyes, I'm yelling at you with my eyes. Come on. I'm just using eyes. And my wife says, Wayne, you're yelling at him with your eyes. Work on the eyes thing, okay? Okay, but what I say, okay, don't let anyone look down on you, is talk up to children, not down. We want to treat every child uniquely. I just want to say that. Of course, age appropriate And if I had more time, I'd talk about talking to preschoolers compared to talking to grade schoolers. But again, the preschoolers, we focus more on the 55 and 38% than I do on the 7%, right? But as they get older and older, the 7% becomes 8 and 9, or however we want to look at that. So here's a few pointers. Number one, when possible, talk to them as friends rather than as an authority. Most kids know you're an authority. You're an adult. They might not treat you like an authority, but we don't have to tell them we're an authority because they kind of intuitively understand that. So here's what I love to tell people who are doing children's ministry. Think grandma, grandpa. When you have conversations with kids, think about how grandma, a lot of times grandmas and grandpas have an in with children because they just talk to them like friends, have time for them, et cetera, et cetera. Another one, keep silly questions for young children. So sometimes we get stuck when we use silly questions with our older kids. It doesn't quite have the same impact, okay? But saying things like, is that a green shirt you're wearing? Okay, doesn't work with your third grader, okay? But you ask a 4-year-old that, right? Totally different. So watch with the silly things, did you wash your big toe today? Great question for 4-year-olds. You know what I mean? No, I didn't. That's okay. I didn't either. We have some fun with that. But, be careful with that with the older kids, unless you're up here. Okay, next one. Find something that you have common to talk about, especially one-on-one with kids. It's just a really easy one. But, I find out a kid likes to swim, and I like to swim. Man, the other day, I was trying to figure out the backflip. Have you ever done a backflip? I'm good at backflips. Really? How do you do that with the arm and and just get them talking, and you just got an in right there. My kids are really into Minecraft, and I've kind of taught myself enough Minecraft that, we can do it. Oh, no, the movie Finding Dory, the kids watched a movie. I love walking up to a kid and say, did you see Finding Dory? Yeah, I saw that movie. What did you think of that octopusy guy? Right? Oh, he was fun. Octopusy guy. And now we have something in common. We can have talk. We can start communicating. Asking kids' opinion about things is awesome to do. Getting kids to talk. Walk up to a kid, Finding Nemo, if you've seen the movie. How old do you think Nemo is? I think he's 7. Really? Why do you think he's 7? Well, because, whoa, that's awesome. Does it have anything to do with anything? No. But kids love to feel valued by asking their opinion. And if you've got a kid that just wants to talk to you, that is wonderful. You don't want to squash that down. You want to build that up because that means they're feeling accepted and like they can talk with you, et cetera, et cetera. And then this is super important. Connect before you direct or correct. Okay? Connect before you direct or correct. So the more I have a relationship with children, the better it's going to be for me to be able to correct them later on and direct them, you see. If I don't have a relationship with kids, I say, Johnny, I need you to just sit down for just a sec. Our relationship doesn't have nearly the strength and the power that it does when I've connected with him before and after and those kinds of things. Does that make sense? All right, a couple other things that aren't in your notes before I talk about the next one. Explain, don't assume, especially when you're up here. A lot of times we make big assumptions with children, like they have already heard that story or they already know what the Bible says, or, be careful with big words. I don't care if they're smart kids, okay? When I talk to adults, I'm careful with big words, all right? I don't assume that kids know what salvation means. And when I'm talking, I might not say the word salvation. I might say, when Jesus Christ came into my life instead. I'd rather use more words to communicate something than using a big word that they might not get. Okay? And then this is a side note, but talk positively about kids when they're nearby, but don't make it weird, But just within earshot, be able to say something like, did you see how Jessica threw that ball? She is strong. You see, Jessica's over here. I didn't see it, but she really had, and then we just move on. Just helps build up, communicate. Okay, so ways to speak life to kids. My last one's how you hear, but I wasn't actually intending to talk about it too much, but I'm finishing up with what we say, and here it is. ways to speak life to kids, or ways to praise them, I think in your notes. Okay, I think the word is praise. A few things that you can do to speak life to children. Number one, speak their name. Okay, I love that we have name tags, as everybody loves to hear their name, including children. So whenever possible, speak their name. Okay, and you're up here, speak their name. You're talking to them one-on-one, speak their name. You're calling them across the room, speak their name. Okay, it's a little bit of a connection. I think there's something biblical about it, and all kinds of things about the names and where they came from and all these things. But our name is an identifier for us, and it's part of our identity. Even if there's not a reason why mom named you John, the fact is it's part of your identity, and I'm pulling on that identity when I use it. The next one is use positive labels over negative. Okay, please, please, please. You already know this, but I'll just say it again. Just don't use negative labels ever with kids. Okay, you never want to say clumsy or silly or lazy or slow, those kinds of things as much as possible. I mean, even my 15-year-old son sometimes, I'll say, Ben, that wasn't the smartest thing to do. And he'll say, stop calling me stupid. I didn't call you stupid. I was saying what you did stupid. But it just still doesn't do it very good. So labels are very important. And of course, mom and dad, sometimes grandma, grandpas, aunts, uncles are giving all kinds of labels to them that aren't very good sometimes. I'm not saying all of them do that. So let's find a way to give labels to kids that are positive and helpful. And I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Could you hand this out to everybody, one of each of these? So be careful with the labels. Find some positive labels instead, well, I'm giving you some here in a moment. Where'd my labels go? Oh, yeah, smart, strong, fast, thoughtful, caring, just give them the labels that they need. And then the next right here, it says, learn the art of praise. That's where the word praise goes. Learn the art of praise. And let me just tell you about praise. My son, Elliot, is in a class right now at the HFL School District, and he's with a teacher that is just awesome. And he walks in, he's nervous, and the teacher reaches down and gets on his level and says, I am so excited to have you in my class. You're going to do an amazing job here. This is going to be the funnest class you have ever been in. Right? And I just looked at that guy and I go, yes, we got the right teacher, for him. And so let me just tell you about this. It's great to praise physical attributes and clothing. I love those shoes. Woo! Okay? That's a beautiful dress. It's okay to do that, but it's easy to do that. And I want to say to you, do it, but don't do it very often, right? You know why? Because we don't want them to have their value in what? Appearances. It's not like the only way that he talks to me and says nice things to me is because I'm looking cool. So it's great to do with little kids, and it's great to do a little bit, but learn how to up the ante, as it were, and get more. Yeah. It does sometimes creep out parents. Yes, I agree. I think that is true. However, I will say this, and sometimes I'll say this to people, the best way to greet a parent is to greet their child. And sometimes it's easy, especially when you're off the, just all of a sudden you turn around, and sometimes when you have to do something quick, it can help you make that little connection point with kids. So I do it, and I think that it can be good, but you want to be careful, like you said, that we're not like communicating something else. Were you going to say something?
So just the impact, even in college, my son came home and said, this teacher said this is going to be the greatest class ever.
Yes.
He brought it home and he hardly talked about it.
That's awesome. It really works. My time's up. Let me just finish this, okay? Accomplishments are good. But again, we have to be careful with accomplishments, okay? So it's easy to say, you did a great job. That is an amazing coloring, that you did. It's wonderful to say that. We want to be careful that's not our only praise that we give. Why? Because now we're praising, it's all about what I do, okay? And we want to praise who you are, who God has made you, the character that God has built in you. So I actually gave you, I don't know if it's 50 or 60, that piece of paper that's got character traits. It'd be awesome for you to memorize them. But, even post it somewhere that no one else can see it. And just ask yourself the question, when Johnny comes in here, which of these do I feel maybe spiritually before the Lord or whatever? Grab one of these character traits and say, John, I must tell you, you are courageous. You have a lot of courage, right? And you just say that over and over over for the next 6 months. You see? And you are speaking life into Johnny. Okay? The other one I gave you, it's a little harder to do. It's called My Identity, and it's actually not built for kids. But I'll just throw it at you. There's all kinds of Bible verses and things in the scriptures that talk about our identity in Christ. And Pastor Greg just shared all that with your new values and different things like that. But learning how to speak Bible truths, Bible is the word that we underline, Bible truths into existence. And so, you look at these and one of them says, you're set apart. So walking up to kids and saying, do you know that God has made you super special, important, something He set you apart? That's speaking Bible truths into them. I love to use the one, a sweet aroma. Do you know the Bible actually says you smell good to Him? And you just... Okay, so all that said, speaking life to kids. Okay, the last one is how you hear. And there's a couple quotes there and a bunch of active listening skills that I use when I talk about listening with college students and adults and all kinds of people. I just threw them all in there because I think one of the key ways to communicate with children is to listen as well. As a matter of fact, in your notes, I think I said 100%. Okay? So listening has to do with paying attention to them, focusing on them, not what's going on in the room and other people. Show that you're listening with your body language and gestures. Provide feedback, ask for clarity, defer judgment, respond appropriately. You can read all that. But listening is, again, a huge part of communication in general, but especially with kids. My time's up, but hopefully this was helpful to you and encouraging. Let's do it. Thank you all.
Thanks, Wayne. Maybe a little bit of value in what Wayne shared today. Yeah, we're gonna definitely post that video. That we might have you come and share that every one of these volunteer family times. So good, but how? I mean, it's like so practical and yet so forgotten. We forget those really basic but powerful principles. Right. Everywhere. And not just for preschoolers and grade schoolers, but you can apply these principles, like you're saying, marriage, amen, workplace, college, like, so good, Wayne. Thank you. It's awesome. We're going to take 5 minutes. So if you want to grab some more food, there's some savory things over there now. There's a bathroom right outside the door. And we're going to come back in 4 minutes. So